Hi, I'm Stassi Schroeder. On my podcast, I share candid updates from my personal life, chat with some of my best friends about what's going on in our lives, give commentary on the latest pop culture headlines, and sometimes deep dive into random topics I'm obsessed with, like human design. It's a bit all over the place, but that's how I like it. And you will too. Listen to my podcast, Stassi, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 398 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing okay. How about you?
Doing great.
Yeah?
You know, we talked about it on TCAB, but it's still very cold. We're still digging out of quite a bit of snow.
You're not digging. You're making me do the digging.
I mean, I feel like it's the least you could do for all the free dinners that you get.
I guess I won't complain.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Jim Nickel.
Hey, Jim.
Pierpont Limpkin.
What's going on, Pierre?
Tabitha Bryant.
Hey, Tabitha.
Jalissa Carrasco.
Well, what's happening, Jalissa?
Mary Kay Cordova.
Hey, Mary Kay.
Dina Devaney.
Well, thank you, Dina.
Bill Gurton.
There's Bill.
Barbara Fox.
Oh, Barbara.
Scott.
What's going on, Scott?
Kylie.
Hey, good old Kylie.
Japonica Ferguson.
Japonica. That's hard to say.
Yeah. Especially the way you say it.
And fact that it's a Ferguson, too,
it's a
though.
Ferguson.
I don't know.
And last but not least, Michelle Aspden.
Hey, Michelle.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Victoria Stebbings.
Well, thank you, Victoria.
Yeah, appreciate all the support that we get. Gibbs, we have a brand new episode out right now on TCAT where we're talking about this guy named Steve Pankey. Husband, father, car salesman, even ran for governor of Idaho a couple times. He was recently convicted of murdering 12-year-old Janelle Matthews, bringing closure to a case that had been cold for, like 30 years.
Man, I love that.
Yeah. So it's an interesting episode. Make sure you check it out. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am, but did you notice what case number this is?
It's 398.
You know what that means?
It means we're 2 away from 400, if my math is correct.
It was close, and you nailed it.
400, such a big number.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll have something pretty big
I'm excited.
in store for everybody on episode 400.
But I know you want to get this one going.
Yeah, we're talking about the 8-day bride. Christina Kettlewell had been married for just 8 days when her body was found in 9 inches of water near her honeymoon cottage in Severn Falls, Ontario. The police immediately focused on her husband, Jack Kettlewell, and his close friend, Ronald Barrie. Christina Cecilia Mocon Kettlewell was born on August 7th, 1925. She was just 21 years old when she died. Christina's husband was 26-year-old John Ray Kettlewell, who went by the nickname Jack.
Why Jack? John Ray, and they come up with the nickname Jack. Makes you wonder.
Well, what other name is Jack short for?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you're John Ray, how do you get Jack out of that?
A lot of people are called Jack, but what is their real name?
Maybe Jackson. Jackson.
All right, good talk. Good talk. According to the Toronto Star, Jack was a veteran of the Royal Canadian Dental Corps, which provides dental care to the Canadian Armed Forces. Okay, that's a new one on me. I've never heard of the Royal Canadian Dental Corps.
People just like to belong to corps.
Corps. Those are very important. Christina and Jack had known each other for 3 years. Her parents disapproved of the relationship because Jack was not Catholic, although he did later convert, per the Toronto Star. They also thought that Jack and Christina spent an unusual amount of time with Jack's best friend, 28-year-old Ronald Barrie.
Unusual amount. I wonder what that equated to.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I mean, did you think that either of your kids ever spent an unusual amount of time with someone? I don't remember ever thinking that. Ronald's birth name was actually Ronnie Ciuffo. He was an Italian immigrant. Ronnie had worked a variety of jobs in construction and insurance, but he wasn't the most successful businessman. He was also a professional ballroom dancer.
Well, there you go.
Which I know you are as well.
You beat me to it, didn't you?
And I know you're still sore about Dancing with the Stars having never contacted with you. And I keep telling you it's because you are not a star, and star is in the name. You're a great dancer, but you're not a star.
They don't call me Twinkle Toes for nothing.
Christina's sister Helen commented that the family thought Ronald might have been in love with Christina. So maybe that's where it comes from, right? They're saying they're spending a lot of time with this guy. Maybe he's in love with her. Yeah. We don't like it. In May 1947, Christina disappeared from her family home for several days. Unbeknownst to them, she eloped with Jack on May 12th, 1947.
I'll show you, Mom and Dad.
I'm getting married.
That's right.
After the elopement, Christina and Jack and Ronald spent a few days at an apartment in Toronto. Ronald would spend their entire honeymoon with them. Okay. Now you've taken it too far.
Yeah.
I get it. You're all friends or whatever, but that's a bridge too far for me.
Yeah. Normally that honeymoon suite's made for two.
Well, and anybody listening right now thinking about their honeymoon, for most, it's an unbelievably happy time.
Right.
First of all, you just got married.
Sure.
You're on your own with the person you love the most in the world. You don't have a care in the world in your honeymoon. Those cares don't really start until you get back to the real world. What most people are not used to is having a third wheel with them on their honeymoon.
Plus, it's time to get jiggy with it.
Okay. I don't know if the kids are still using that term anymore. I'm assuming they're not. I definitely know you shouldn't be using it. On May 17th, the trio traveled to Ronald's remote cottage in Severn Falls, Ontario, which was only accessible by boat.
Well, that's remote.
It's pretty remote. Christina acted out of character at the cottage. She went into crying fits and at times seemed in a daze. She spoke to Ronald privately and questioned whether Jack truly loved her. Okay, this is the first week after marriage. That's pretty strange to start questioning it at that point.
Yeah, that's normally not a good sign to the start of a wedding.
No, it's a bad harbinger.
Yeah.
For sure.
Harbinger.
On May 20th, just 8 days after the wedding, Ronald Barrie's cabin caught fire. Christina went missing in the chaos. Ronald had gone out and returned that evening. Shortly after his return, the cottage caught on fire. He entered and found Jack sitting in the smoky cottage with a head injury. He pulled his friend out and started looking for Christina, but he couldn't find her even though she had been in the house a few minutes before the fire started. This is all according to Ronald. The flame spread rapidly, and according to Ronald, the cottage burned down in about an hour.
That's really quick.
Well, there's a lot going on here. We have this fire at the cabin. Christina is reportedly in there, inside, before the fire starts. Jack is found with this head injury inside the cabin. What's going on? Ronald's closest neighbor lived almost a mile away. Major John Scatterfield saw the flames and went to the cottage. He found Jack on the ground unconscious and the cottage on fire. Ronald told him that Christina was missing and he couldn't find her. Scatterfield put Jack in his boat and took him and Barrie to the Severn Falls landing, where Barrie's car was parked. This was around 9 p.m. Ronald took Jack to the hospital and they called the police. That evening, Christina's body was found by Neville Sweet, owner of a boathouse in the area. Christina was found face down in about 9 inches of water. She was only 200 feet from the cottage.
It's pretty close to the cottage.
Yeah, that's not far at all. A major who attempted to put out the fire did not see Christina's body nearby when he went to the river to fetch water hours earlier. Christina was still in her pajamas. Her body was not burned, and there were no signs of trauma. Investigators suspected she was already dead before the fire started. Uh-oh. That doesn't mesh well with what Ronald said.
No.
Over 20 people were questioned by the police, but Jack and Ronald were the main suspects. And that makes sense, right? They were there with her. They're in the cottage. At the very least, they have to be persons of interest. Jack was treated for burns, shock, a head injury, and drugging that left him dazed. He was interrogated for 3 hours upon his release, but claimed he couldn't remember anything after 11 a.m. on May 20th. He was unable to account for his head injury.
Conveniently, maybe?
Maybe, but you could also look at it as though this guy suffered, some pretty major injuries. He was burned. He had a massive head injury.
So definitely some trauma there.
And he was also drugged. So did he drug himself or did someone else do it?
Yeah.
Ronald was questioned for 13 hours and provided a statement that the police described as fantastic. And I assume, if ever interrogated, any story that came out of your mouth would be described as fantastic.
Or fantastical.
One or the other.
Yeah.
The coroner determined that Christina died of drowning. There were no marks of violence on her body. There was water in her lungs and other evidence that indicated she was in the water for a long time. The coroner was still awaiting the results of drug testing. Then on May 22nd, the police indicated that Christina's drowning death may not have been accidental.
So it's going to pique some people's interest.
But we did say she was found in 9 inches of water. So this is not like she fell into the lake and drowned. Now, could you trip, fall, get knocked unconscious and drown in 9 inches of water? Well, absolutely you could. Yeah. Does it seem like it would be a little harder to do? Yeah, I think so. The Windsor Star learned about important developments in the case that had to do with insurance policies. Ronald Barrie purchased his cottage in August 1946. And we mentioned it earlier, right? He sold insurance at one point in his life. Ronald took out a $5,000 Canadian insurance policy on his cottage. According to the Toronto Star, Jack was the beneficiary of 2 $5,000 life insurance policies for himself and Christina taken out before the wedding. These policies had a double indemnity clause in the case of an accidental death. When adjusted for inflation, these policies were worth $260,000.
It's a lot of Jack.
Yeah. So, there's quite a bit of money involved here. However, the Windsor Star reported in 1947 that Ronald sold life insurance to Christina and Jack, but was not the beneficiary of the policies.
So it doesn't sound like Ronald would have done this for the money because he wasn't a benefactor.
Yeah, he wasn't going to benefit from it, but Jack could have. Investigators learned that Jack gave his war gratuity, which is paid to Canadian veterans, to Ronald. Jack also removed all of his family from his will for unknown reasons. So some strange things there. Why is he giving Ronald this money? And why is he removing his family from his will? Now, could that have something to do with getting married? Possibly.
Maybe.
Now you're going to change your will and leave it all to your wife. That could make some sense. Christina's wedding ring was never recovered. Now it's not clear who bought the ring, whether it was Ronald or Jack, or whether Jack borrowed it from a married friend. And that would be strange. Here, honey, here's your wedding ring, but I borrowed it from some other woman.
Yeah.
Who is going to want it back at some point.
But for now, you can wear it.
For 8 days.
Yes.
It doesn't speak well of Jack.
No.
If that was the case. And the price of the ring kind of ranged all over the place from $1,000 all the way up to $13,000. Ronald was taken back to the cottage for a reenactment. As reported by the Windsor Star, he said he found Jack dazed, as if he had been drugged, and rescued him from the cottage a few minutes before it burned down.
Like he got there just in time.
In the nick of time.
Nice.
In his interview at the police station, Ronald said the Kettlewells were going to spend the summer in his cottage and brought enough clothes and food for the season. Jack and Christina went to see the cottage a week before the wedding. They wanted to spend their honeymoon there. They returned to Mimico, Toronto, where they lived, to get married. Ronald witnessed their wedding, but he tried to keep his distance so the newlyweds would have privacy. He said they seemed happy in the days following the elopement. That's nice of him to keep his distance so that, these people who just got married could have a little privacy.
You can get jiggy with it?
Or get jiggy with it.
I wonder, maybe they tied like a towel or a shirt around the doorknob, like, hey, when you come back, don't come in if you see the white towel on the doorknob.
Okay. That seems very specific, like you're hearkening back to your college days or something.
Don't come knocking if the cabin's a rocking.
The police also spoke to Christina's family to learn more about her relationship with Jack. According to her family, Christina went out with Jack before the war started. She was engaged twice while Jack was serving overseas with the military. While Jack was away, Ronald Barrie sometimes took Christina out to shows. Ronald said he only did this as a favor to Jack.
Or maybe he was a little fascinated with Christina.
Or infatuated. Yeah, one of the two. When Jack returned to Canada, he and Christina went out a few times. Her family didn't think they were serious about each other until she ended her second engagement to be with Jack.
Well, that's when you know something serious is going on, when you find out that your daughter is leaving one person she's engaged to be with somebody else.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. According to Christina's sister Helen, Christina ended her engagement because of something Ronald said to her. But Christina's parents didn't want her to marry Jack. They preferred her previous fiancé because he was Catholic. Well, we've talked about this a lot of times, especially in some of these older cases.
Yeah.
Religion, very important to many people.
Sure.
And I think, more so even in the past, parents wanting their children to marry someone of the same religion.
Yeah. To the point it almost looked bad for the family if somebody in their family stepped outside of the religion.
Yeah. Or it caused rifts in families. Yeah. The police learned that on April 29th, 1947, Christina went to the home of R.C. Thomas in Mimico to deliver eggs. On her way to work, Jack and Ronald were boarding there. Later that day, Christina's manager called her parents to ask why she didn't show up. Her family didn't know where she was and hadn't heard from her all day. The following day, they received a telegram that said, per the Windsor Star, Jack and I were married. See you when we get back.
Gotta love that.
Oh my gosh, as a parent, how upset would you be about that? Now, it depends. There are some dads out there who are maybe saying, whew, okay, I don't have to pay for some big elaborate wedding.
Well, that's true.
But, if this is a guy that you're not crazy about, you're just finding out that your daughter has gone off and married him.
Yeah, yeah. And you're probably also upset because even though that's not who you wanted her to marry, you didn't get the opportunity to even have them get married at the church.
Or be a part of it in any way.
Exactly.
Right? That's supposed to be this special day. But as we know, this wasn't true. Christina and Jack got married on May 12th. So why they sent that telegram, I don't know. Christina returned home on May 12th. Her sister estimated that she'd lost 20 pounds in the short time she was gone. Christina told her sister that she didn't remember much of what happened in those days, but she and Jack got married in the home of a parish priest in Mimico. Jack told her he was willing to convert to Catholicism. And I just want to talk about someone losing 20 pounds in that short of a period of time.
That is a short period of time. Maybe they had Ozempic back then.
I do not believe they did. The reverend who married the couple said he didn't observe anything unusual about Christina's appearance or behavior on the day of the wedding. Ronald was the best man and drove them away for the honeymoon. Ronald is a big part of this relationship.
He really is. He's in there pretty deep.
He's not even a third wheel. He's like 1A and 1B, it seems like.
Exactly.
He's like the alternate. He's the guy that you tag in the wrestling match. Ronald Barrie told the Windsor Star on May 22nd, "When I'm able to tell my story, it will be sensational. It will explain this nightmare so that my name will be cleared." So he's got some huge revelation that he's going to let loose at some point.
Almost like, you won't believe what I have to say.
Well, the police did say it was fantastic.
They did.
The Star reported that Ronald typed his own 3,000-word statement after 6 hours of questioning by police and fire marshals.
3,000 words?
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a bit.
It is. In his statement, Ronald emphasized he had no intention of staying at his cottage during the honeymoon. He said, "Things look bad for me now, but they won't be when the whole story comes out." He gave his accounts of events to the paper. He said that Jack and Christina intended to go to Severn Falls by train, and he planned on joining them later that summer. Jack and Christina had so much luggage that their landlord urged Ronald to drive them instead. He agreed and was going to return the following Monday. When the fire started, Ronald was outside and saw smoke from the kitchen. He ran inside and called out for Christina. She and Jack had been sitting in the living room minutes before, but now she was gone. He assumed she ran outside. Ronald told the paper, "The cottage was blazing like a fury. I was helpless." He said about Jack's head injury, "I know it wasn't very serious, but how he got it, I'll never know." When asked if the fire was a suicide pact between Jack and Christina, he said no, it was not a pact. Continuing his statement, Ronald told reporters that Jack once asked him to be the beneficiary of his insurance, but he refused. And to me, that's such a strange thing to tell reporters. Jack wanted me to be the beneficiary of his insurance, but I told him no.
Yeah, it wasn't me asking him to make me his beneficiary.
He said that Christina was never serious about the man she was engaged to and only told her family about him to placate them because they didn't want her to marry Jack. And that could be true.
Yeah, that's happened before.
Yeah. She could have been waiting on Jack to get back from the war, and to make her parents happy, she got engaged to this other guy who they really liked, knowing the entire time she was never going to marry him. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying it could have been true. He also disputed the claim that he was always hanging around Jack and Christina. He emphasized that they were friends and went out on double dates. Okay, well, he's disputing it, but it does sound like he was around quite a bit.
Yeah, it seems like there was a love triangle going on in that trio.
I don't think I've ever heard triangle and trio be used in the same sentence. I mean, you got these people in a menage a trois.
You know, something definitely seems like it was going on.
Yes. Now, to what degree, I don't know, but I'm with you there. Something just doesn't seem right about the whole dynamic between the three. Ronald didn't mention this in his account, but reporters learned that both Christina and Jack were in a daze earlier that day. Ronald apparently knew they were sick and thought they had ingested some kind of poison, so he tried to make them vomit. I mean, there's a lot going on at this cottage.
I know.
And I don't know about you, but it's not a place where I think I would want to stay.
For somebody that's trying to give them their space, he's really in their space a lot. Now he's playing doctor, nurse, or whatever. Hey.
Well, you had him playing doctor anyway.
Well, they were playing doctor anyway. That's exactly right. Doctor.
Ronald told the Windsor Star that he didn't believe Jack overdosed on anything because he didn't drink, smoke, or use drugs, and neither did Christina. He said, "There's no foul play, if that's what you mean. I will stake my life on that. Jack and I are in the clear. It is in reverence to Christina that I am not at this time making a public statement. I want to save embarrassment to her people." Okay, so you have to break that statement down. First of all, just because you don't drink or use drugs doesn't mean you can't overdose.
That's true.
Or be overdosed by someone else. And you know what Ronald's saying? Jack and I are in the clear. And I'm not making a public statement because I don't want to badmouth Christina. That's essentially what he's saying.
Sure.
So without coming out and saying it, he's shifting the blame to her.
And he says to her people, but isn't he one of her people?
Well, I think he means her family.
Right.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. On May 24th, it was reported that foul play was ruled out and the police were investigating the possibility of suicide. And I don't know how they ruled out foul play. I wish there was more out there about it. Seems pretty quick to do so, in my opinion. Special investigators with the Ontario police partially discounted a possible drug trafficking angle in the investigation. An inspector recalled that doctors found no traces of drugs in her remains. The Globe and Mail reported that Christina gave Barrie a note for $15,000 on the day she lost her life. He claimed that he advanced her sums of money to pay people who were blackmailing her. I mean, you could write an episode of Dynasty and it wouldn't have all the twists and turns
I know.
that this thing has.
So many moving parts.
Half the people listening won't even remember what Dynasty is. But for those of you who do, Jack spoke to reporters for the first time on May 27th. He said he was feeling more like himself, but had nothing else to say. Okay, so he's speaking to reporters, but essentially saying nothing. On May 31st, local papers reported that the investigation was nearing its end and no murder charges were expected.
I mean, as Jack and Ronald, they got to feel pretty good reading that.
Yeah, I mean, police came out and said they were suspects.
Right.
And so if no murder charges are to be expected, then that would mean they would be in the clear, at least for the time being. Ronald Barrie previously said he was going to release his statement after Christina's funeral, but he stopped talking to the press after a lawyer advised him to keep quiet.
Probably smart.
Yeah, because he has said all kinds of off-the-wall things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just put your lawyer hat on for a minute. Hey, Ronald, why don't you shut the H up? Because you're saying a lot of strange things.
You're not doing yourself any favors.
No, you're not at all. On June 4th, 1947, Attorney General Leslie Blackwell ordered an inquest into the death of Christina Kettlewell. The proceeding started on June 19th. Ronald Barrie turned over 3 suicide notes to the police, which was revealed shortly before the inquest started. So again, for a guy who was trying to distance himself and give these people their space, he seems to be at the center of everything.
He's pretty engaged.
The court heard that before she got married, Christina tried to poison herself twice. During her second suicide attempt, she also poisoned Jack, and they both became sick. So one theory was that on the day she drowned, Christina wanted to end her life and Jack's. Isn't it interesting, though, Gibbs, that Ronald Barrie happens to have 3 suicide notes?
It's amazing that he has these letters.
And is able to turn them over right before this inquest.
Very convenient.
Into her death. Contradicting earlier reports, the court heard that a small amount of codeine was found in Christina's stomach, indicating a much larger amount was ingested before she died.
I mean, codeine can make you drowsy.
Well, and I would think a very large amount of it would make you in a daze and pass out eventually.
Yeah.
A pathologist testified that there were no marks or bruises on Christina's body, but her lungs were extravagantly distended. That was the phrase that was used.
Yeah. We use that in the medical field sometimes.
At the inquest, it was revealed that Jack and Ronald were lovers. In the 1940s, this testimony was considered extremely shocking and scandalous.
Boom. Love triangle reverse.
Snip, snap, snip,
Right.
snap.
Didn't see that one coming.
But maybe it does explain why Ronald was around as much as he was.
Yeah, because he was in love with Jack.
And not Christina, as it was previously hypothesized.
And maybe that could be one of the reasons why Christina was a little distraught.
Because she found that out after the marriage. Not something that most women would probably take very easily.
Oh, I wouldn't think so. I mean, can you imagine taking a walk and then coming back to the cabin and opening that door and you see your husband and his best friend embraced?
Yeah, let's just use the word embraced and leave it at that. C.P. Hope, the prosecutor from the Attorney General's Department, did not establish whether Christina knew about the relationship between the two men. However, Jack previously said he was positive she didn't know about it. Jack's signed statement admitting to his relationship with Barrie was presented in court. So, it wasn't like this was a rumor. I mean, it was confirmed. These two guys were lovers. Now, the question of whether or not she knew about it was still up for debate. Jack saying no, but it could have undoubtedly played into this whole ordeal.
Of course, yeah.
On the stand, Jack denied that there was anything more than friendship between them when the prosecutor handed him the statement. Jack first said he didn't know what was in it, but under further questioning, admitted he read it and signed it. So again, he signed a statement and then tried to, on the stand, say that they were just friends.
Right.
Why would he do that? I get it. The 1940s was a much different time.
Sure. And this is very public.
According to the Windsor Star, the statement contained certain admission of sexual relations. C.P. Hope told the court, "I don't want to embarrass this man, but it may be that this relationship had something to do with this girl's death."
Fair statement.
Yeah, I think it's very fair. And how could you not think that this was a motivating factor, a possible motive, something along those lines? According to the Toronto Star, Jack testified that he was pressured to admit to the affair. That is what the police were trying to make. I'm sure he was pressured to admit to it. But does that mean it wasn't true?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Those are two different things, right?
if it's true, it's true.
The police pressure people to do all kinds of things, especially tell the truth. Now, admittedly, they've pressured people into lying as well in the past, unfortunately, but all he's saying is that he was pressured to admit to the affair.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, if there really was this affair. The court heard details from Jack's May 25th statement. Jack admitted that his relationship with Ronald started in 1940 and ended in May 1943 when he joined the military. The relationship continued when he came home in June 1946. So as much as he tried not to admit it openly, like you said, very public arena, he ultimately did.
Right.
Jack testified that on April 29th, 1947, he and Barrie were in a friend's apartment in Toronto, while the friend was on a trip to New York. Christina visited that morning and said she had the day off work. The three of them sat down for lunch around noon. Afterwards, they all became sick. Jack lost consciousness. They remained in the apartment until May 1st. Christina appeared to be doing better. And it was around this time they decided to get a marriage license.
Baby, we were all really sick, and it was close. It was dangerous, and I just don't want to live without you. Let's get married.
They went to Severn Falls and stayed until May 6th. They returned to Toronto and got a marriage license on the 8th. Then they got married on the 12th. Christina was in good health when they arrived at the honeymoon cottage on the afternoon of May 18th. Jack found her crying, but she wouldn't say why. She asked Jack if he loved her. He said yes, and she responded, "That's all that matters."
Well, if you knew that your husband loved his best friend, a man, that could cause some distraught. And you would want to know, do you really love me, though? Do you love me, or did you marry me for the convenience?
Or did you marry me to mask the fact that you were in love with Ronald?
Yeah.
Because that happened back then, too.
It sure did.
But we've mentioned a couple times that, she was crying. She wasn't happy about something. And I think it is starting to come into view that it's quite possible that it was the fact that she either found out about Jack and Ronald, the true nature of their relationship, or something along those lines that was causing it. On May 20th, he saw Christina writing a letter. She asked Ronald if he had a stamp. Jack did not know who the letter was addressed to. Ronald left the cottage after they had breakfast together. Christina washed the dishes and Jack put some wood in the stove and fireplace. He sat in the living room while Christina stayed in the kitchen. Ronald dropped in a couple of times that morning because, of course, he's trying to give them their space.
Right.
But he's dropping in multiple times in the morning.
Probably because, one, he wants to see his
lover and paramour.
Yes. And two, probably thinking, man, there's a lot of drama going on. Maybe I need to keep my eye on these two.
Christina and Jack ate lunch together without Ronald. Jack had only eaten a few bites when he started to feel sick. He told Christina he wasn't feeling well, but couldn't remember if she responded before he lost consciousness. Okay, was there something in the food that made him sick? If so, it knocked him out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and did Christina put it there?
The next thing he remembered was Ronald slapping his face and telling him the house was on fire. The court heard that the day before she died, Christina wrote a letter to Edith Thomas, Ronald and Jack's landlord in Mimico, and gave it to Ronald to mail out. The Windsor Star published this letter, which said, "Dear Mrs. Thomas, first of all, I'd like to apologize for all the trouble I've been, especially last Monday night. I really am very sorry because it must have been embarrassing to you. It seems to me I've done nothing but get everybody in wrong. I've been doing a lot of thinking these last few days and have come to the conclusion that it would be better for all concerned if I just ended it all. Being burnt to death is not the nicest thing in the world to do, but is the only way. Anyway, Mickey, who was her brother who'd passed, always said I would be with him soon. Ronnie's in the boat outside somewhere. By the time he gets back, everything will be all over with. He must have been afraid something would happen because he's staying an extra day to make sure we go back to Toronto with him. Will you please thank Mrs. Barger and tell the family not to worry too much? Thanks again, Chris."
Wow.
Well, I mean, this is a letter that really does make it seem, assuming it was written by Christina, that she was intent on ending her life and that she set the cottage on fire to do so. Jack testified that he didn't know about the note Christina wrote to Ronald at an unspecified date, which said, "Ronnie, I guess this will be the best way. I might as well face the fact that Jack doesn't care a hoot about me. I've done everything but propose, and he hasn't asked me to marry him. This will be the best way out, as I couldn't bear to see any other girl have him. I'm sorry, but what could I do? I've done everything he's asked me to do. You know how far. Life's funny, isn't it? You go along so far and then boom, you've had it. I'm sorry to have to do this, and I know you will never forgive me. Thanks for everything, Chris." So we mentioned 3 suicide letters. We've read 2 of them. Christina wrote another letter to Ronald that said, "Dear Ronnie, I guess when you read this letter, things will be kind of changed some. This time you will definitely be by yourself. You stopped me from doing anything the last time, But this time you won't know anything about it until it's all over. I hate to do this to you as I know the spot it will place you in and the explanations that will no doubt have to be made. No kidding, I feel like a heel placing you in such a predicament as you've been better than a brother to me. But what can I do? When you love someone, you really love them. And I know that there is no one for me but Jack. And if I can't have him, I don't want anyone else. I have waited years, you might say, in the hope that Jack would ask me to marry him, but I now realize I'm just a passing fancy where he is concerned. And as I said many times to you, if I can't have him, no one else is going to have him. I just couldn't bear the thought of another girl being Mrs. Kettlewell. I suppose the one I really blame for everything is my father, with his old country ideas. Perhaps if he had left us alone, Jack and I might have hit it off, but now he has it all planned, whom I should marry. Maybe Sophie and Helen can marry whom he chooses, but I am darned if I'm going to. Jack is in the bedroom asleep, little knowing what is coming. I hope you won't judge me too harshly, but you know what I told you would happen if Jack threw me aside. Please say goodbye to Mrs. Thomas and all the others for me. I guess there's not much more to say. Thanks for everything. I really wish things could have been different, but such is life, I guess. Don't blame yourself of anything. You really tried to get Jack and I together. It certainly isn't your fault that things didn't turn out. I told you that you'd be going to New York by yourself, but you wouldn't believe me. Thanks again, Chris. So it's a longer letter.
It is.
But again, it does make it sound as though she's not happy. Jack doesn't want her, and she doesn't want to live without him.
And so if she can't have him, nobody can, and she's willing to take him and herself out. If you believe that letter's from her.
Yeah, that's definitely the big thing. Did she write it? Did she not write it? Christina's sister, Helen, told the coroner's court that Christina expressed fear of both Jack and Ronald. Helen said their parents didn't mind her going out with Jack, but they objected to her going out with two men at the same time, and they disliked Ronald Barrie. Helen testified that Christina earned between $50 to $60 every 2 weeks and never talked about having thousands of dollars. Helen also testified that Christina told her about being drugged on 2 occasions. One occasion was when she was at the Thomas house in Mimico, where Jack and Ronald lived. Christina told her sister she drank something one morning while at breakfast. With Jack and Ronald in the Thomas home, she lost consciousness. And when she woke up, she was at a different apartment. Ronald then told her everyone knew she and Jack were married. Okay. There are a lot of people losing consciousness in this saga.
Yeah. I don't know what they're drinking.
Stop drinking it. But to be having breakfast in one place and then to wake up at a different apartment would be quite jarring, I would think.
It's a nightmare for many, but
it's a Saturday night for you. Helen testified she said it put her in an awful position and that she might as well go through with it. Helen went to the apartment to try to talk her out of marrying Jack. Christina wouldn't tell her where she was going and seemed upset. When Helen learned they weren't getting married for a few more days, she went to the local police chief to try to stop the wedding, but was unsuccessful.
What's a police chief going to do?
Nothing.
She's not underage.
No, and it's not a crime.
Yeah.
Well, maybe some of it is, the drugging.
Well,
But what I'm getting from this is that, and we said it earlier, right? They told, apparently, her parents that they were married before they actually got married.
right.
And now it seems as though she was drugged and then she wakes up at a different apartment and Ronald is telling her, hey, everybody knows that you and Jack are married, or everybody thinks you are. And she's telling her sister, I'm in an awful position. I might as well go through with it.
Let's just go ahead and do what everybody thinks happened.
Almost as if she didn't love Jack or didn't want to marry Jack as much as everybody thought.
But when you read her letter,
It seems that
Jack-
she did.
yeah, Jack was her world.
When Christina finally returned from the apartment, She said she wanted to go see the man she was previously engaged to. On her way to the train station, she told Helen she was afraid of Ronald and Jack, but didn't say why. Christina also told her that Ronald and Jack were writing a story for a magazine. One day when they were fooling around with handwriting, they asked Christina to write her name. She wrote it and worried she had signed something she would regret, but she wouldn't say what. Helen testified she said she discovered Ronnie and Jack were a bunch of crooks.
You wonder what she signed that day. Could have been a future note that they wrote.
Could it have been life insurance?
Suicide note?
A suicide note? A check for money? We don't know. Edith Thomas, the owner of the house where Ronald and Jack lived, testified that they all had dinner together in late April. Christina seemed terrified and didn't say much. Ronald and Jack mentioned that Christina wanted to marry someone in Hamilton, Ontario. Although the report of Mrs. Thomas's testimony is somewhat unclear, it seems like at one point during the dinner, Christina's sisters came to the house to try to talk her out of the marriage. At one point, Ronald said to Christina, per the Windsor Star, "Look here, Chris, I'm not asking you to marry Jack or not to marry Jack. But if you don't want to marry him, go with your sister. If you do want to marry him, stay." Christina then said she wanted to marry Jack.
It seemed like there was a lot going on that night.
Well, and it seems like she was very conflicted. You know, her sisters are saying that she said that Ronald and Jack were crooks. There's talk of her possibly wanting to meet up with her old fiance, maybe even marry him. The other thing that comes out a lot is that she's terrified in the presence of a bunch of different people.
And she was terrified of Ronald and Jack.
Well, it sure seems that way. But then there's so much that doesn't make sense. If that's the case, why go through with the elopement? How do you make sense of all of the suicide notes talking about her love for Jack if, she thinks he's a crook, she's afraid of him? Things just don't seem to add up.
No, it's like a game of Pong right now. Things are all over the place.
Back and forth?
Back and forth.
Edith Thomas testified that after the elopement, Ronald called her from the Toronto apartment they were staying in and said Jack and Christina were sick and unconscious. It sounds like they were constantly sick and unconscious.
It seems like an ongoing thing.
You know who's not unconscious? Ronald.
Yeah, he seems to be doing okay.
He's the only one that has his full faculties, apparently.
Maybe he's the one making the morning drinks.
Yeah. The next day, Ronald told her that Christina wrote a letter, and he believed Christina drugged herself and Jack. Richard Thomas, Edith's husband, testified that he asked Christina if she was happy before she left for the cottage in Severn Falls. She said she was afraid that if the three of them went there, something would happen. Christina told him, "Ronnie has all Jack's money, and he owes me $200. I think the one thing that, I'm definitely getting is this vibe that Ronnie is kind of, pulling all the string.
Yeah.
That's really what it seems like to me. But we just don't know for sure.
Kind of like the puppet master.
Yeah. Ronald Barrie's much anticipated statement was read in court. The following details were published by the Windsor Star. According to Ronald, Christina approached him in July 1946 and asked for a loan, but wouldn't tell him why she needed the money. He loaned her $2,000, which is a lot of money in 1946.
Oh, yeah.
A month later, she came to him again. When pressed, she said somebody was making things difficult for her due to an incident that happened in April 1946. Christina told Ronald she was attacked by 4 or 5 men after a church dance in Toronto. She was afraid to tell her family and said she would kill herself before she told her dad.
Wow.
Which is hard to imagine.
That she felt that way, so scared to tell her dad. And
of something that doesn't appear to be her fault.
Exactly.
Ronald gave her an additional $2,000. This went on for several months. And by the end of 1946, he had given her $12,000. She made him swear he would not tell Jack what happened. First of all, where does this Ronald guy get $12,000?
Well, he's getting it.
Because we already said, that would be what, a couple of $100,000
in today's
world. Who is loaning anyone hundreds of thousands of dollars? On April 28th, 1947, Christina came to the apartment in Toronto where he and Jack were staying and gave him $10,000. He asked where she got the money, and she claimed that the people who were blackmailing her agreed to help her. He thought this was strange, but Christina was worked up, so he decided he would get a full explanation later.
Hey guys, I know you're blackmailing me for $15,000,
but can you help me out?
And I paid you a lot of this, but can I have 10 of it back so I can pay back my friend? You can keep blackmailing me, but I just want to pay him back, and then I'll pay you later.
I think it's something that is kind of a continuing thread throughout the story. Not only that Ronald's maybe pulling the strings, his stories just don't seem believable.
No.
The things that he's saying.
All over the place.
Yeah, and they are all over the place. Not that they don't all seem believable. Most of them just don't even seem to make sense. When she left, Christina asked if she could deposit the money for him. Ronald gave her an additional $5,000 to deposit into his account. Okay, so, hey, I'm giving you back your $10,000 of the $12,000 that you allegedly gave me.
Yes.
Can I take this $10,000 and deposit it for you? Do you have that much faith in me? Not only do I have that much faith in you, here's another $5,000 in cash that I just have laying around, apparently, or whatever. So just deposit the whole $15,000. I trust you.
Be a good friend. Do that for me, please. You won't even let me take 100 deposit for you.
I wouldn't give you a quarter to get me a piece of gum out of a vending machine.
That really hurt.
Because I'm assuming you would pocket it and also take my car and leave me wherever we are.
Not going to deny that.
For a quarter. Christina returned to the apartment for dinner and gave Ronald a bank book showing the deposit. Christina returned on April 29th and said she was taking the day off work. Ronald ate lunch with Jack and Christina. He returned to the apartment within the hour and found the two of them unconscious. As he was trying to revive them, he found an envelope with his name on it. It was a suicide note written by Christina, read earlier in court. Ronald didn't want word to get out, so he tried his best to nurse the couple back to health. They seemed better on April 30th. Ronald knew her parents would be getting worried, but he didn't want to tell them what happened. Jack thought that if they sent them a telegram saying he and Christina had eloped, they wouldn't worry too much, so they decided to send it.
So it was those two that sent the...
Yes. Yeah. And it was because, according to them, they didn't want her family to be worried about all of this stuff that's going on, which seems to be Christina trying to kill herself and Jack multiple times.
Yeah.
Christina and Jack then agreed they would really get married. So you have to ask yourself, why is Jack agreeing to marry Christina at this point? He's been found drugged and unconscious seemingly multiple times.
You would think he would wonder. Every time I get drugged, you're in the room with me, Christina.
Well, yeah. First of all, who's getting drugged multiple times? Then, yeah, you would have to start to wonder, in your words. But then why would they agree to get married? That's to me where some of this stuff starts to fall apart. Is it that this thing or that thing couldn't be true? No. But when you put it all together, it just doesn't seem to mesh. On May 1st, Ronald informed Christina he was going to the bank. She started to cry and said she never deposited his money. Ronald was shocked because he tried to help her and she stole from him. But they had to stop talking about it because Jack entered the room. Ronald wasn't able to bring up the money again until May 11th. Christina told him she gave it back to the men who were blackmailing her. Back to your point, Gibbs, if you're being blackmailed, obviously you're not dealing with very ethical people, blackmailers.
Yeah.
You give them a bunch of money and then all of a sudden you say, hey, can you help me out? I need some of that money back. You're not getting that money back. On May 18th, while they were at the cottage, Ronald found Christina crying alone while Jack went out on the boat. She said she didn't know whether Jack married her because he loved her or because of what happened on April 29th. Ronald was worried she would attempt suicide again, so he stayed an extra day to talk them into coming back to Toronto to get more supplies. Around 11 a.m. on the 20th, Ronald found Jack unconscious. Christina was staring out the window. He was scared she drugged him again. I mean, if this was really what was going on, if you're Jack, you got to get the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah, you have to say, okay.
Once, okay, I understand. Twice, you're pushing it. Third time, being drugged on the honeymoon, that's a deal breaker for me.
Yeah, I'm out of here.
Again, it's part of why this story just doesn't seem to add up to me,
right.
But Christina started writing to Mrs. Thomas. He told her that was silly because she was going to see her later that afternoon. Ronald then decided to postpone the trip to Toronto another day because Jack was sick. Ronald was in and out of the house for the rest of the day. He returned around 6:30 and found Christina still sitting in the living room. Jack was lying down, but his pillow was covered with blood from a head wound. Christina said nothing to him. Ronald took Jack outside. Before he did so, he noticed the smell of coal oil. He was outside with Jack for 15 minutes. When he noticed smoke, he searched for Christina, but she wasn't in the house. Ronald's neighbor came to help and took him and Jack to the hospital. When he got to the police station later that night, he learned Christina was dead. So, I mean, this does seem like a little bit of a different story because initially, it sounded like Ronald found Jack inside the house with a head wound as the fire was raging.
Yeah, like he saved him from the burning fire.
In this account, he finds Jack with a head wound, takes him outside, and then the house catches fire while they're outside. In court, Ronald testified that he and Jack did not have a sexual relationship. After 1939, he also denied arranging the wedding between Jack and Christina. Ronald reaffirmed that he loaned $12,500 to Christina before her marriage because she was attacked by 4 or 5 men in Toronto who were blackmailing her. Christina paid him back $13,000, which included $500 of interest.
I don't understand how 4 or 5 guys can attack you and then they blackmail you.
What are they blackmailing you over? The fact that they attacked you?
Yeah.
Or
Strange.
they attacked you and there was more that happened and you're so afraid of your family finding out that other thing happened?
Well, that's true, because back in the day, sometimes you would be blamed.
Yes, women were blamed unbelievably for being raped.
Yeah, a victim.
And sexually abused. But other than that, I can't understand what it would have been about. Richard Thomas returned to the stand and testified that he was prescribed a drug called Seconal, which treats epilepsy and insomnia. It was last prescribed to him on April 1st. One weekend, his wife asked if he needed the new prescription. He checked his pill box and found just one capsule, which was strange because he hadn't used any of them. He was asked if Christina would have access to it, but testified she would hardly have known they were there. They were in a plain box. He did say that Ronald Barrie once went to the store to pick up his prescription, which is pretty interesting because, as we've said, Jack's getting sick. Jack's unconscious. Christina's sick. Christina's unconscious. You know who's never sick and unconscious?
Yeah, Ronald.
Ronald Barrie.
And he always seems to be in the mix.
Yeah, he's around.
Yeah.
He's just not the one that's ever found sick or unconscious. Christina's friend Louise Rodman testified that in April 1946, Christina confided in her that she was invited to Toronto and woke up in a strange apartment with her clothing off. Christina showed her a bruise on her stomach that she said she received when she was attacked. Louise took Christina to a doctor, but found no indication what she said was true. The state produced a letter written by Christina to Louise Rodman's brother-in-law dated April 17th, 1946. Christina wrote, "Darling Herb, you probably wonder why the lapse in letters. It's like this. Since Sunday night, I've been worried sick. I went to my club dance as usual, only this time it was held in West Toronto. Little did I realize I would be attacked by 4 sex maniacs. Yes, me of all people. Towards the end of the inquest, CP Hope called on Dr. C.S. Tennant, superintendent of the Ontario Hospital. Dr. Tennant read all 3 suicide notes and came to the conclusion that Christina was part of a class of abnormal people. The doctor determined, per the Windsor Star, her abnormality is in the emotional field. These people are easily excited and repressed. They ordinarily demonstrate rather poor judgment and are easily influenced by those to whom they are closely associated or for whom they may have a close affection." Hope asked the doctor if he found sufficient evidence to explain Christina's actions. Tennant said it can be accounted for by this girl having found herself in such a position that she felt she must do something desperate. Her notes might be entirely true, that she felt such a love for Kettlewell she could not bear to see him go to any other woman. There's evidence regarding the relationship of these 2 men. If this girl obtained knowledge of that, I can quite conceive her frame of mind being such that she would do what she did.
I'm not surprised by that. You know, if she found out, and we believe she did find out, that Ronald and Jack were lovers, it would be devastating to her.
I think it would be devastating to anyone, but especially devastating after you'd just gotten married. If she found out, during the honeymoon, I think that would be even more devastating. Yeah. One of the last witnesses was Inspector Ray Simmons of the local fire marshal's department. He investigated the cottage on May 21st and found no physical evidence that it started in one particular place. He didn't know there was coal oil on the property, but he talked to a grocer who said he was asked to deliver a gallon of coal oil and 5 gallons of gas to Ronald Barrie.
There's Ronald again.
Ronald is popping up in a lot of places where it does make him look so very suspicious. In his summing up, the prosecutor described Christina as a happy girl who was easily led. Jack was weak in character and dominated by that man Barrie, whom he called that sinister character in the background.
Interesting.
Hope said he didn't doubt that Christina attempted suicide, but he questioned how she got to the river without any marks on her and how she drowned in 9 inches of water. He suggested Ronald was the only one capable of doing it. He also called Barry's story about the blackmail money ridiculous. And I would agree with that. To me, that whole story was ridiculous.
Doesn't make any sense.
And the amount of money that they were delivering back and forth seems so outrageous to me. On June 25th, 1947, the inquest ended with an open verdict. The jury concluded that Christina Kettlewell came to her death on May 20th at Dinnertime Rapids in the Severn River, Muskoka, in a small cove near the cottage owned by Ronald Barrie, by drowning, due to the fact that the post-mortem examination disclosed codeine in the stomach of the deceased and the suspicious fact that she was found drowned in 9 inches of water. Your jury is unable to decide from the evidence given whether or not there were foul means employed in her death. And I can understand how the jury, given the limited information they had to work with, would be unable to come to a specific conclusion. How are they going to say, yes, we think Ronald Barrie killed her? Based on what?
Yeah.
I mean, I can sit here and say, he doesn't look good. It's hard to believe pretty much any of the stuff that he said.
But was she poisoned? Did she try to commit suicide? And was her drowning accidental or
committed by,
yeah,
Richard or Jack or whoever? The media moved on after the inquest ended. Jack Kettlewell remarried 3 years later and started a family. He separated from his second wife in 1969, but they never divorced. Jack never told his family about Christina. His son Richard met Ronald Barrie when he was a toddler. Ronald moved to New York in 1956 and gave his dog to Richard, who was just 2 years old. The family never heard from him again. In 1992, Richard's wife, Sharon, was looking through newspaper microfilm and learned about Jack's first wife. They decided not to bring it up to Ronald because he was in poor health. Richard Kettlewell told the Toronto Star, "It was just like a door opening into another world. I often wondered, why is this top secret?" During the inquest, Jack suggested Ronald didn't tell him about Christina's suicide notes to protect him. But Richard doesn't believe this theory. He said his father was easygoing and avoided confrontation. They believe Jack was a victim of a scheme. Richard told the Toronto Star, "I think this Barrie guy sort of manipulated my dad, just dominated him."
I don't think he's far off.
No, it's kind of where the story leads, right? From everything that we've talked about, as we wrap up this case, it does seem to me more than likely that Ronald Barrie was kind of pulling all of the strings. He was manipulating Christina for sure.
Right.
And I think most likely Jack as well.
Yeah.
And you wonder, where does the life insurance policies fit in? Where does the insurance on his cottage fit in? And where does Christina's death fit into all of it? Does he benefit from her death financially? Does he benefit from her death because he's now able to be with Jack for at least some period of time until Jack moves on?
Or using her as the reason for the fire, but the insurance claim still pays out. It wasn't him doing arson. If he can make it seem like she started the fire, over being jealous.
I mean, this is it's a very interesting story. And I think one that, people can kind of wade through all the information, and there is a ton of information.
There is.
And kind of form their own opinion as to what they think happened. I mean, was Christina really drugging herself and Jack multiple times, and then she tried to kill Jack and set the cottage on fire? Or was Ronald, who seemed to be with them all these different times where they were quote unquote poisoned
and knew where that medicine was,
did he do it? That just seems like a much more likely scenario to me. But then you have to factor in these three notes and, whether or not they were authentic.
Even if a handwriting analysis expert said that's her handwriting, it was mentioned that they were good at forging names.
And they had her sign some stuff.
Yeah. So if they're good at forging and she signed something.
Yeah, it's possible. Now, one of those was pretty long. I don't know.
It was.
That was long to have forged. I think you would keep it a little shorter maybe if you're trying to forge it, but I don't know. No doubt it's a very confusing, perplexing case, but one that, people can develop their own opinions on for sure. But that's it for our episode on the 8-Day Bride. No matter how it happened, Christina lost her life.
Sure did.
And these other two men went on to live the rest of theirs.
Right.
Should they have? Yeah, if they weren't involved in her death. But it's possible that one or both of them got away with murder too. But that's it for our episode on the 8-Day Bride. We've got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. This is Martina. I am calling from Knoxville, Tennessee, where it is snowing right now. I was listening to your episode, and I believe it's from last year, Roderick and Mark Newell, and you said a question that who joins the armed forces to take a break? Well, that was my intention because I was so tired with school. And I just knew college was going to be kind of a bore, and I wanted to start and finish it all at once. So I decided to join the armed forces, specifically the Navy. And my quote-unquote break has been going on for 10 years, almost 11. I have thus completed my bachelor's degree, but I am still on this break in the armed forces, like you guys said. So I've been listening to you guys for over a year and a half now, and that's all I got to say. Keep your own time ticking.
Did she say snowing in Knoxville?
Yeah.
That probably doesn't happen that often.
I think it snows in Tennessee.
Yeah.
You got anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I'm shutting myself down at this moment.
All right. First of all, appreciate your service. And again, you say break, but is it really a break? Because I'm sure you've been working your you-know-what off. So.
What's that?
You know.
That thing?
What?
Oh, yeah.
But we appreciate the voicemail very much.
We do.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, this is Raina. I'm a true crime fan all the time. My son is, I think, sick of me listening to your guys' podcast, but I'm now all caught up and going back through and listening to them all. And here is my son.
Trust me, she just never stops listening. Like, I try to go to bed and I hear her from my room with you guys playing in the background. And it's so funny to hear you guys just playing at 4 a.m. And you guys are also fun because it's all I listen to on the way to school. Yeah. And keep your own time ticking. Team Gibby.
There is a very smart boy.
Team Gibby. So I actually mixed up the voicemails. I put the ones meant for Unsolved on regular TCAT, and I put the ones meant for TCAT on Unsolved. So hopefully they listen to Unsolved too, because I'd love for them to hear this voicemail. It's pretty funny, actually. All right, buddy, that is it.
Yeah.
For another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Pluto TV is the place for movie fans like me.
And TV fans like me.
They've got something for everyone, and it's totally free.
You can binge laugh-out-loud sitcoms like Frasier.
And rewatch cult classics like Higher Learning.
Whether you're in the mood to solve a little crime before bedtime with NCIS or Tracker.
Or curl up with a surefire hit like Forrest Gump.
Run, Forrest! Pluto TV has thousands of movies and shows, all for free.
Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.